Welcome to the Sales SOS Podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Welcome to the Sales SOS Podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, and I'm here with your Sales SOS Podcast crew, Bryn Tillman, Daryl Prell, Mike Simmons, John Way, and Renee Bigelow. And we today are talking about your target market. And right now we've talked about target market. If you didn't hear this conversation, jump back to the prior podcast. We're going to talk now about this idea of account-based marketing, because we wrapped up our last segment by saying, if you are only focused on the buyer that does the outreach, who is what we call in Miller Hyman your technical buyer, meaning they had a checklist of things they were supposed to make sure this tool or solution did, then you throw sales out there and they're with a person who's going to keep telling them, oh, no, I'm the buyer. I've got all the control. Don't talk to anybody else. Oh, no, I'm managing this. And that is never a place that you want to be. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of account-based. What people are using this term all the time. When I was young, we called it a complex sale. But what is this concept of account-based? Renee, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you want to jump in and define account-based marketing or account-based sales for us?
Well, I'll just say it sort of maybe in super layman's terms, and I'm sure everybody else has something they want to add to this definition, but I'll just start it off by saying what you're looking at for account-based marketing is making sure that you have all the people who will benefit from the product, be asked to use the product, be involved in the purchase of the product, and that you can approach the marketing and the sale from their perspective. So how they will be involved, how it solves their problem, what it's going to change or interrupt. Often there's one department who's going to have pain because something comes on, and they need to understand what that pain is for and why it's benefiting the company overall. So understanding the different perspectives for all the people involved. And that'll just kind of get us started, but I'm sure others want to add in.
Who wants to jump in next?
I'm happy to jump in.
Oh, Bryn.
So a typical ABM is when the whole company gets involved around a selected number of whales, right? We've identified we want to get into these 20 accounts. Marketing is on, marketing and sales and customers. So everybody is on the same page that we want to land these accounts. And they have now buyer mapped everyone, the challenges, everyone inside of those specific organizations. There's no general anymore. It's hyper personalized, hyper relationship based on these accounts. Now, that is not something that most companies implement any longer from that high level, what ABM was, I think, initially rolled out to be. So I call it account centric sales.
There you go.
Right. So it's not account based, but I may have my top 20 and I might work with marketing to get into those top 20, but I'm not closed to only those folks. I'm prospecting other people. I'm open to, opportunities that come in the door, and we're not only focused on that top 20. But here's the key, whether you're account-based marketing or you're account-based sales, you have to buyer map really well. You have to use your social proximity, who can help you get into these accounts so that you're not like starting out this very high level complex sale with cold calling. And we have to bring value that they are not seeing anywhere else when we're at that level, whether it's through our content or our conversation And the value is different for each role. So we have to make sure that if we are going to go account-centric sales or account-based marketing, that we have done an enormous amount of research and social listening, and we're prepared to go to market versus let's go to market and then figure it out later. So that's my.
The one thing I want to jump in on here,
Thanks,
building on
Daryl.
what Bryn was saying, I know I'm so shy, I got to work on that, is that ABM, and by definition ABS, but definitely ABM, there is a difference. First off, Bryn nailed it. She's 100% right. People need to understand that because they often confuse it. Is ABM is not something that's relevant or appropriate for everybody. So if anybody listening to this thinking they just need an ABM solution that's going to solve all your problems, I would say hold the horses. You need to have a high value customer. In other words, a $100 or $1,000 sale isn't going to be something you want to implement for an ABM. You want a $100,000 sale or more. All right, that's number one. Number two, you want to have a very defined list, exactly like what Bryn was getting at. In other words, what we typically do in an ABM model is you might say any one rep is going to have 10 named accounts that are their whales, then maybe 40 tier 2 accounts, and then maybe 500. When I have time, I'll go touch them. Otherwise, or I may elevate somebody from stage 3 to stage 2 if stage 2 gives me a hard no, that kind of thing. But I'm primarily focused on those tier 1, those 10 whales. Third thing is marketing's got to have a big ass budget. So to do ABM, if marketing doesn't have like $100K a month, they're dropping a pay-per-click, and that's just an arbitrary number. But in other words, it's not $5K a month. You see what I'm getting at? Then again, you're not a candidate for ABM. So I just want to make sure that's out there because a lot of people drop ABM like it's the solution. If ABM doesn't apply to you, either they're not a high value prospect, they don't have a big average selling price, or you don't have the budget to do on the pay-per-click side, that doesn't stop you from doing ABS. In my day, we would have called that target account selling, but I'm just going to go after some named accounts, right? And that's awesome. And that ties back to our last conversation we had in the last episode about your target markets and your ideal customer. Naming them, going after them, identifying and building out that buying committee, and understanding what their individual pain points, that Mike was saying, is spot on, and that's how you get engagement. But there is a big difference from the two, and not everybody's a candidate for it. So don't waste time if you don't fit the ideal profile of an ABM marketer.
Mike or John, do you want to add something? I'm going to jump in then quick, and then I'm going to let you go, John. So one of the things that we can do is kind of skinny down that concept of account-based. So there's this, and again, I just kind of use account-based without an end to it because account-based marketing, account-based lead gen, account-based sales, they all have a slightly different meaning. But we can kind of skinny down the concept too and say, and put in place a plan that, for instance, if somebody comes in and is a company that we would love to really land, and the technical buyer, somebody who's just kind of doing the research, lands on our site and downloads some stuff, we can then quickly jump into an account-based approach. So we can say, hey, we want this one. Have a team in place that will go then identify who are all of the other buyers in that potential account that we might want to talk to, and then decide, are we going to market to them? Is the salesperson going to call them? What are we going to do to rally around this potential account that we really want? And then how is sales and marketing going to work together to execute that? So it doesn't always have to be we're going to spend $1 million and do this really dynamic and well thought out account-based targeted marketing campaign and sales campaign. But we can sometimes use those concepts to help us move further into a selling environment that we want to be in. John, did you want to say something before I jumped in and said that?
I was just going to add on to what y'all said from the strategy that I saw, being done at the enterprise is, everybody said it, and I'll go a little bit deeper, which is you're going to have all of your ducks in a row. And one of the things that I saw really specifically was not only do you have to have, your marketing, I guess, for lack of a better word, more of your top of funnel assets, but you also need a lot of marketing assets down at bottom of funnel. So examples of like customer references, Are they all green? Because you're going to need to pull them. Do you have like really good, I guess even more in depth in industry, like almost like near account case studies and things like you have to have all of those things ready to go, because you like Brent said, you cannot make this up on the fly. So I would definitely say that you need to have a plan to make that happen.
Building off what John said, again, because with the Sales SOS podcast, if you're a bag-carrying sales rep, exactly to John's point, when you are on those discovery calls and you're identifying, quantifying not only what the pain issues are, but the consequences of those issues, the full impact, you must, underline, exclamation mark, share that with marketing. And you must influence marketing and their content team to make you content like those case studies, like those ebooks and white papers, so that you can go back to these target accounts and say, these are our other customers who you compete with probably solve the problem. It's hyper narrow. Marketing is going to resist because marketing wants to make stuff that applies to top of funnel, to hundreds or thousands of people. They don't want to make stuff that applies to 10 people. So this is the back and forth, but you have to give them that information, because in those nuggets, you're also giving marketing hot buttons and messaging that they can use in their demand gen programs that will feed the machine. So I cannot tell you enough, build that relationship with your marketing and push them hard. They will push back. That's okay. That's the give and take.
One of the cool things that happens with strategic accounts, which is where a lot of these types of accounts would fall into, is it goes beyond that initial demand gen, beyond the initial acquisition, and into things like retention and expansion, retention and growth. And then you start to think about, hey, how can we rally the entire team, as was said a couple of times here, around what to do with this customer? And that includes marketing, sales, customer success, customer support. If you've got product-led growth, if you've got a product-led growth motion that you're using, some kind of freemium type thing that's out there, you start to look at people who might be operating inside those companies because they're coming from the same IP range, even if they're not using a company known email address. You start to pull all of this data together and start to get really targeted around the specific companies that you're focused on. And now marketing, even though it's not the 100,000 people out there in the market who are potential, it might be the 100,000 people inside a company that could be potential users of the product. So you start to get into that end user discussion, which is really one of the really cool things about taking a strategic account or a targeted account or a named account or an account-based approach to figuring out new ways to grow your business.
And I think we could spend hours just talking about how to grow key accounts. And that is definitely on our list because it's super important. I want to back up just a second to I'm trying to make a sale to a complex, to an enterprise or to a large company that is a complex sale with multiple people involved in the buying process. One of the things that I hear often is, well, John said he was going to get so-and-so too, or Charlie said da-da-da-da, right? My guy said, I call it my guy selling. My guy said this is going to budget. My guy said that the CEO said, my guy said. So if you're the sales leader or you're the company owner and you just only hear one name and it's a big sale, $100,000, $200,000, whatever, $1 million, and you're talking there, your sales rep is talking about my guy over and over and over again, one person who's going to do everything. They're not. And the chances of you losing, those are the surprises, right? We had that one all wrapped up. What happened? Well, the competitive sales rep happened to be talking to the CEO instead of your guy, right? Yep. And so this idea of understanding who all the buyers are, and if I go back, and I have to go back, to my Miller Heiman days and talk about, wins. What are my wins and what are my loses? If I don't know who all those people are, I am not going to make sure that they win by making this decision. And the other thing that I see with SaaS right now is we're doing this with one person. Oh, this person is buying this product for everybody. And then what happens? John, what happens? One person bought it. What happens with all the users?
They don't adopt.
They don't adopt. Biggest problem in SaaS right now, failure to adopt. What happens next year when it's time to renew?
No renewal, no value.
Because the sales approach was my guy selling. It was single contact, make this deal. No one ever went to figure out what the users wanted and how to get them to adopt it. And if they were going to. Go ahead, Mike.
It's this thing that drives me absolutely crazy. You see all the crap out there on LinkedIn about multi-threading. And then nobody goes and does it. Like nobody knows what it is. Nobody understands. They don't go further. And I know we talked about it a little bit before. It's people have the problem, people are impacted by the problem, people care about the problem. If you understand those three people inside the organization, it's amazing the kind of information that you can get from them and guidance that you can get from them around how to operate inside the organization. Never forget, you're an outsider. Like when Intel, one of my goals when I was working with Intel as a client was to be a green badge. I wanted to get a green badge, and a green badge is a contract employee at Intel. Blue badge is an employee who works inside the organization. I never got to the point where I got a green badge at Intel, even though I spent a lot of time in and around the organization. I felt like they felt like I was an employee inside the organization. I dressed like them when I was there. Depending on if I was up at Santa Clara where they were dressing a little bit nicer, or I was out in Jones Farm or Hillsboro in Oregon where I was dressing kind of like this. Like there are ways to do this. And the takeaway I hope that people are getting from this as you listen is operate with a level of intention with each of the interactions you have with the people that you get a chance to work with inside your customer base and across your potential customer base, and good things will happen. You'll get that reputation of being the person to go to when they run into a problem.
The one thing I will jump in here. I'm sorry, I'll shut up. I'll go quickly. One thing I did all the time, both as whenever I held the title of CMO or CRO at any company, because different reasons, but same outcomes, is I would actually go to revenue ops. And I would say, for these major deals, I need you to alert me. And I would ask this usually 24 to 40 hours before we had our forecast review. Of all the top deals, if no communication has been made on a regular basis with our champion, or if no communication has been made with the rest of the buying committee in a regular, frequent time, because those were red flags. Because that way I knew that we were probably going to forecast this revenue, but the chances are of us getting it were minimal, because exactly what we just talked about was that the competition had a conversation with the CEO and lost the deal. So I can't look at those things all the time, but revenue ops, those people are stunning at what they do, and they are a resource to be utilized. So just a sharing something I do in a leadership role that you can do as well. So sorry, I want to share that.
So Renee, and then let's jump to Bryn.
Sure. I was just going to share 2 points, kind of go along with some of what I said early in the broadcast, which is one is your marketing team often will be the people who start seeing a bubble within a company coming. So if you have a resource or an asset out there, and all of a sudden you're starting to see 4, 5, 6 people at the same company downloading things, you can flag those for sales. So that's a big thing that marketing can help out a lot with, because they may not have hit a top 20, but there's a lot of traction happening that you don't expect, right? Like they could become a top 20 quickly. So there's one. And the other is, I think it's very critical when working with account-based, however you want to call it, account-centric, whichever, and marketing can help a lot with this and sales enablement related tools. And that is to understand not just who your key buyers are, but who your key blockers are. Yeah. Because your key blockers need to be sold into the change, and they need to understand what the repercussions of whatever this is will have on their department. And they need to understand, like, most of the time, why they need to come along, right? Some of the time they need to understand that there's something better in it for them. And then you can have the sales enablement materials that will help you with that will help the people who are trying to get past those champions, those internal champions who are trying to get past the blockers. You may need it for them in a meeting you're not a part of, or you may need it in meetings with the blockers. So I'll just stop with those 2 points.
So hang on one second, Bryn. I want to just say when marketing teams are trying to ask how they can help in the sales process, if the sales team will tell marketing what the most common objections are or who their most common blockers are and why they block, marketing can create content that helps them solve that problem, right? But instead, as salespeople, we do not want to think about the naysayers. We do not want to think about the potential problems. We don't want to mention something that might bring up an idea they don't already have, right? And so thinking about possible objections and working with marketing on tools can be really helpful. Okay, Bren, what were you going to say?
Well, so my first biggest account that I ever got in teaching LinkedIn was Aramark. Aramark had just finished Challenger training, and they said to them, what's next? And they said, go get some LinkedIn training. So I walk into Aramark. It's how I got in there is a long story. But they said, here's the thing. Miller Heiman is our core strategy. How do we implement this and Challenger and LinkedIn? And they handed me a gold sheet.
Yeah.
Right. And they said to me, this is our relationship mapping tool. How do we use everything you do to fill out this gold sheet with the concept of Challenger sale behind it? And, so this, I feel like it just all kind of came together, right? So the gold sheet, there's green sheets and gold sheets and all kinds of fabulous colors.
Blue sheets.
And blue sheets. But the gold sheet, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the gold sheet is a key account plan. Yep. It's a large account plan.
It was mapping out all of the players. And so now with LinkedIn as a tool, you could do it in 5 minutes, 15 if you're really spending a lot of time on it. But then the Challenger sale piece was to identify, what were the issues that each of those stakeholders were having.
Okay, that was a blue sheet. That one was a blue sheet. So
okay, well,
it doesn't matter. The point is that you're mapping it and you understand it and you know who all the players are, and you are never turning your back and going, I don't want to deal with that problem. You map it all out, you follow it, you figure out what you have to do to overcome the objections, to handle the red flags, to leverage your strengths. So absolutely. So what's interesting, by the way, they have been a Miller Heiman client. I assume they still are, since I was probably a teenager. Wow. So talk about doing a really good
5 years.
job. 5 years. 10 maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Doing a really good job of selling something in, staying in touch. I can't say that what's happening with it now, but back in those days, that was a complex sale that the company rallied around and really made sure that everybody was invested in the success. And we can do that. And 20 years later, 30 years later, actually, I hate to admit how many years later, they're still a client. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to just briefly talk about, you're talking about, ABM and going after target accounts, and Rin showed incredible restraint and only brought up LinkedIn this late in the process. That should have been like almost like once we know who our accounts we're going to go after are, like we should need to talk about building accounts, because that's the one thing I see over and over and over again is sales reps are not great at building the account list. I'll start there, but then I'll be gracious and say, but most companies are not great at building defined lists. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had to fight to buy basic tools like Navigator or any kind of, Zoom Info or other type tools to build lists. Yeah, exactly. And it could be something basic. It could be a much more affordable solution, right? It doesn't have to be Zoom Info. It could be Hoover. It could be a variety of tools out there. Why is it? I'll throw it to the crew here. Why is it that most people don't understand that? They don't want to fund it, even though it's so critical, because they all talk about targeting accounts. Go ahead, Bryn.
The tool stack has been exploited for so long now. when I was at People Links as the chief learning officer, the first thing we would do is take inventory of the tool stack.
Yep.
And about 80% of the tools they purchased, they were burned, whether it didn't do what it said they were going to do, doing what they said it was going to do was too hard, doing what they said it was going to do didn't actually become effective in the sales process. The tool stack is overwhelming. So I believe today people have gone on that other pendulum side. I overspent for many years and now I refuse to spend. And there's a happy medium there, right? And the other thing is the tools that are so siloed, right? You've got this tool that does outreach, and this tool that does data management, and this tool, and you've got all these things that aren't talking to each other. And the tool itself sold into a decision maker that was wowed by the demo and said, "Oh, this is the answer," right? And so they spent all this money on tools, yet they never got any of what was promised from any of them. So I think there's just a tool shyness now. Now, the irony is most of the companies that won't buy tools or that are cheap about buying tools are a tool themselves.
Yes.
So,
but I also think
I'll add one other reason real quick why they're not buying the tools. And we already nailed it when we started talking about account-based marketing. And that is adoption is horrible with most of the tools because nobody spends any time making sure that people know how to use it and get the value out of it. I just say that because one of the top things that I get asked to do is audit the tools, and everybody says, we're not getting this, we're not getting that. And then they've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 people who actually are using it. So they're the only people using it. Those people leave and then they cut the tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think there's another piece to it because I think those are absolutely right. I think there's also this concept of every tool is an investment. Oh, this is an investment. It will save you time. Oh, this is an investment. It will do whatever, save you money by spending money. But in any case, what we've missed is in order for your sales team to be effective, you must invest in the training and the tools that they need to be successful. And so we almost need to train leadership to think differently about investing in sales success. That does not mean, by the way, and you guys have all seen this, you need every single tool there ever was in order for your sales team to be successful. And the sales team's going like, okay, I have to go to 7 different tools in order to do my job. No, I don't want that. So we don't want to invest in everything, but we really want to be thoughtful about what do they need in order to make them more efficient, more effective in their sales job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any last thoughts on account-based before we jump to our next topic?
I'll add just one little parting thought that's a tip for people to think about. If this is kind of new to you, this is where marketing can help a lot with some of your fields and your data. You're going to probably need to kind of clean it up. You're going to need to think about some progressive profiling with some of the contacts that you have and getting more information. Titles is one that I see like missing in so many customer databases when I get into them. And you really do need to know titles if you're going to go after this. So if you're even contemplating this being part of your strategy, working on that data is a really big first step.
Yeah, I just want to say how impressed I am that Renee mentioned progressive profiling. Awesome. We need way more of that. That's awesome.
Okay, we're going to wrap up this segment. I think the key takeaway is understand who's involved in the buying process and then figure out as a team what's your approach. Is this a targeted account we're going after and we need to surround? Is this somebody who's come to us and we need to figure out how to do it? How does marketing support sales to touch all of the different buyers? How does leadership make sure that sales is actually talking to all the buyers? How do we stay in touch in a complex business-to-business sale with all of the people that we need to be in touch with and in order to make the sale? And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS Podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.